Thanks ever so much for joining us today for our webinar on leveraging your research to impact. My name is Sarah Hopwood, and I'm the Director of Programs and Education at Stanford Impact Labs. Before I jump into the topic for today, I want to give a brief overview of SIL for those of you that might not be as familiar with Stanford Impact Labs. So we're an initiative within the School of Humanities and Sciences that works with faculty, postdocs, and graduate students across all of Stanford School to support solutions-oriented partnerships work. Now, we do this through funding Impact Labs. This is a term that we use to refer to teams of scholars working with policymakers or practitioners to co-create, test, and scale a solution. And by solution, we mean a policy design or a program model or maybe a technological innovation that seeks to address or make progress on a specific social problem. We also run a series of fellowships and training programs to support scholars with the necessary tools and skills to design and implement these kind of projects. We support scholars with mentorship and frameworks that can be applied across all topics and disciplines. So if you are someone that wants to leverage your research skills or tools to work with partners outside of the university, whether this is to tackle a social problem related to health inequities, to environmental justice, to immigration, it's just some examples, then Stanford Impact Labs is the place for you. Now, for those of you that have either applied to one of our programs, read our website, or spoken to our team, you'll know that we talk a lot about pathway from research to impact, or pathway from science to impact. But what does this actually mean? And how do you get yourself a pathway to impact? Sadly, there isn't a menu of 3 different pathways to impact for you to choose from. But hopefully today I'll help to elucidate what we actually mean by pathway to impact and some considerations and frameworks that you can employ as you begin to identify and develop your pathway to impact. Before doing that, I do want to just zoom out a bit and set this type of work that Stanford Impact Lab supports within a broader ecosystem of impact work that happens at Stanford and within higher education institutions more broadly. You're probably here today because you're a scholar who's interested in not just producing knowledge, but ensuring that your expertise and your skills can make a real difference in driving change. And there's lots of different ways that scholars can have an impact in the world. So many scholars position themselves as advisors, whether this is to policymakers, to think tanks, or to other private or public institutions. Other scholars serve in organizations, perhaps at the same time as conducting research, or perhaps through sabbaticals and periods of leave. And if that sounds like a pathway to impact that you're interested in, please do check out our program, Scholars in Service. Scholars can also have a huge influence through the media, through press, through communications. So whether this is through interviews, through writing op-eds, books, or even just great tweets. And scholars may appear as expert witnesses within the judicial system and have huge impact through that route. These ways that scholars have impact are all crucial, and they all have their own pathways to impact. What we focus on specifically at SIL is the way that scholars can have an impact by working in close collaboration or partnership with practitioners or policymakers to develop a new solution, whether this be a policy, an initiative, or a program. This is the kind of impact work that we're referring to today throughout the presentation. So what do we mean by pathway to impact in this context? I think a helpful way to explain this is by giving an example of what we don't mean. Traditionally, the model for this kind of work looks something like this. The researcher or scholar expends a lot of time, energy, and expertise analyzing and conducting research that can help to address a problem. They then throw it out into the world, ideally in a more accessibly written research brief, sometimes just in the form of a published paper. They then cross their fingers and hope that the practitioner or policymaker on the other side catches it and implements their idea. Now, there are a lot of things and steps in this process that would need to happen for this scenario to work out. There needs to be a catcher in the first place, someone that needs the scholar's insights. They see a role of research in addressing the social problem they are working on, and they have the motivation and time to be out there looking for those research insights. They then need to find it. They need to have the time to read it and to be able to understand it. Those insights need to be perfectly aligned with their needs. They need to address the same piece of the social problem they are grappling with. They need to present a solution that is feasible and realistic and relevant to their specific context and their specific population. And finally, the information that they get needs to have exactly the right information for them to act. It needs to tell them correctly what to do in a way they can implement it, factoring in all the policies, the power structures, the finances, and the practicalities of their environment. As you can probably guess, there are a lot of points at which this process can fall down. And as a scholar in this scenario, all you can do is throw your work out there and hope that it all works out. So when we talk about pathway to impact, we are referring to an approach where this isn't all left unknown and with all these risks. Instead, the scholar walks hand in hand with the partner from the onset, co-creating a solution with those who will ultimately implement, test, scale, and enable it. And you as a scholar take an active responsibility for ensuring that the design of the solution reflects the needs of those that will use it, and that the relevant parties or institutions are brought into the process from the onset. So rather than some ready-made pathways to impact, what we want to share with you today are some steps and questions to help guide your thinking as you begin your journey to develop a strong pathway to impact. So first of all, you want to ask yourself, who wants and needs your research insights? What is the actual role of research in supporting change? For there to be a role of research, someone must be in a position to use it and to see the potential that if they had this research, it would lead to a change in something. There are lots of factors that cause and maintain social problems, and not all of them can be addressed through research. So you need to confirm that for a particular project, research will really make a difference. Secondly, you want to break down all the things that would need to happen for the anticipated change to occur and get as granular as possible here. Who are all the people that would need to behave differently? What are all the steps that need to happen? What logistics, finances, and policies are needed to enable this? And related to that, who are all the people that need to be involved for change? Who can block this or stop the desired solution from being implemented? And what do they care about? What are their motivations and interests? And finally, and this is the crucial one, who do you need to work with and what do you need to factor into your project design to make sure that all of these considerations are addressed? At the start of any project, you will likely have very few answers to any of this, and that's okay. The most important thing is that you should not and cannot know your pathway to impact at the onset or by yourself. It is by engaging with all the relevant people in the problem state base that you start to figure out the pathway to impact. This is iterative and ongoing, and you might find yourself eventually addressing a slightly different social problem to the one that you first set out to tackle. At the beginning, it might look like engaging in a lot of informational conversations with practitioners, with policymakers, with those impacted by the social problem, to understand who is already doing what in this space, what is currently causing the problem, and what are the gaps and the opportunities. Further down the line, it might look a very granular co-creation of the operations and the practicalities of the solution with partners and end users to ensure that the solution is feasible, it's appropriate, and it can be used and sustained in the long run. So what are some concrete activities or exercises to help you in that process? I'm now going to go through some frameworks that we use in our training programs, emphasizing again that these are frameworks to guide the kind of questions you should be asking stakeholders, partners, and end users. They won't unfortunately give you the answers by themselves. This is going to be a lot and potentially feel a little abstract at the moment, but we will share these resources after the session for you to refer to and use. And please do use the Q&A function to put in any reflections, queries, or questions, and I will seek to clarify and expand as much as possible at the end. So to try and help it feel more concrete, I'm also going to use an example project throughout to help illustrate some of these concepts. The example is fictional, but it pulls from a couple of different projects that we have supported over the years. And the social problem this example seeks to address is that households that earn below the median income in Yolo County, California, especially those below the poverty line, are less likely to be able to safely evacuate their homes when threatened by a nearby forest fire, and they experience significantly more financial burden if they do. On conversation with stakeholders, it became apparent that a significant contributor to this is that marginalized communities do not know when they should evacuate, what to do, where to go, or what resources are available to support them. The researcher worked with a local community-based organization, FIRE, First In Relief for Evacuees Foundation, to design a new platform that provides the information that's needed, the updates on forest fires, actionable advice, and connects users to resources during and post-evacuation. So with this example in mind, the first important component of your pathway to impact is to develop a theory of change. This should come in the form of a sentence, if X, then Y, a statement of the concrete thing that will lead to the direct change. So for our example project, the theory of change was, if we co-design a live GIS platform that provides context-specific emergency preparedness information about proximate forest fires, then marginalized community members in Yolo County will be able to make more informed decisions based upon their relative risk and access the necessary resources that they need. Now, articulating a theory of change isn't simple, and I'm going to move quickly through this, but it is something that takes time and something that we support scholars with as they engage with stakeholders and learn more about their theory of change. But 3 important things to look for in a theory of change. So first of all, there needs to be a specific thing in the first half. What is a thing? So this could be a service, it could be a program, it could be a new policy, it could be a dashboard, a training program, an advocacy strategy. And this is the most common pitfall that we see in theories of change, is that there is no concrete thing from the perspective of an external user. Conducting research or analyzing data does not count as a concrete thing in this context. This thing will likely not be something that you create by yourself, but what the project seeks to create by combining your research insights or skills with the input and expertise of end users and stakeholders. Secondly, you want to make sure that it is a theory of change for the project, not the outcome. So the if we X should refer to something that the project is doing, not an outcome of the project. Finally, the second half should flow directly from the first half. If X, then Y, with no large leaps of assumptions. A good way of checking this is that the second half contains someone who is doing something differently as a consequence of the thing. So just to give some examples of when these checks don't hold up in a theory of change, you can see from the first one that there is no concrete thing. It's just the action of mapping. In the second one, it is more a theory of change for an outcome. So a short-term outcome that leads to a long-term outcome, and not of the project. And the third has a very large leap to impact with lots of assumptions. Why does all this matter? First of all, it is an exercise to make sure that your project has a tangible solution that comes from research insights and people who can use, implement, or act on the solution. And these are 2 crucial components for a pathway to impact. Secondly, it also allows you to unpack and get very granular about all the considerations, the assumptions, and the design needs for your solution to lead to your intended outcome. And so this brings us to our next step in developing a pathway to impact. Unpacking all the things that need to happen for the theory of change to be true in order to get from the if we to the then. For every project, there will be lots of steps that need to happen, conditions that need to be true, and people that need to do things differently. So in our example, in order to get from if we to then, the platform needs to contain the relevant information that community members need. Community members need to know about the platform. This might require promotion. This might require partnerships. They need to be motivated to use the information from this platform over perhaps other sources of information they're getting. This requires building trust or leveraging brands or reputation or perhaps recommendations. They need to be able to access the platform, both in terms of language and data literacy, and also in terms of just internet and mobile phones. Information on the platform needs to be presented clearly and intuitively. And finally, those providing the information to the platform about the resources that are available need to provide it on time. They need to provide it so that it's accurate and in a way that can be integrated onto the platform. They therefore need to be willing and motivated and resourced to do this extra work. So for our project to be successful, we can't just assume that all these will happen. They need to be verified and they need to be factored into the project design. Again, I want to emphasize that all of these design needs are to be understood iteratively through close collaboration with partners and particular actors that feature in your theory of change. And as you work with stakeholders, more will probably appear. So far we've focused on the granular side of implementation. Next, I want to zoom out and think about what the long-term vision is for this project. How do you scale this solution? What do we mean by scale exactly? So scale will look very different for different solutions. For some projects, it might be getting the solution to more people at the same time. For many, it might be more about getting it to people repeatedly over time. Others, it might be about deepening and broadening the impact, or perhaps applying one research insight from one context to many. For all of them, you want to think about the operations, the practicalities, the policies, and the partnerships that would be needed to sustain and implement over time in a way that is efficient to you, and so it can drive as much impact as possible. Perhaps a crude way to think about this is what systems are needed to externalize and automate this. For a program, this could be thinking about how to recruit a large team of facilitators to deliver the program. How do you train them? How do you deploy them? How do you allocate them? What would they need? Where do they sit? Who will coordinate it year on year? Who with, and how do you work to operationalize and standardize the process, disseminate it so that it can be applied and implemented by others? For a technological solution, scale considerations could be who and how do you host something so that it is not on internal Stanford servers, or who will maintain it over time, update it, troubleshoot it, and how do you fund this? Importantly, in all of this, what is your team's role over time? So for example, project, the initial solution was co-created and tested with a community-based organization and hosted by the scholar. But in the long run, for this platform to be sustained, the vision was for it to be taken up by the county government as their go-to source of information during and post-wildfire incidents, meaning that they can reach the whole county. So a common question that we get at this point is, why are we thinking about this now? This is completely understandable. We emphasize not jumping into an assumed solution to spend time iteratively co-creating it. Before you've even piloted, you don't even know if it works. So why would you be thinking about scaling it from the onset? Something that we have learned is really important is even from this very early design stage to be thinking about who and how it is likely to ultimately scale. And there's a few reasons for this. So firstly, a version of a solution which is scalable might look quite different to one that you can pilot. You'll have different levels of resources available, who is implementing it, the control that you have over it. All these might look different at scale and might impact on the outcome. So you want to be testing now a version which is scalable so that you are measuring whether the actual realistic version will work. You also want to make sure that you are measuring in your pilot or in your evaluation outcomes that you know will matter to whoever it is that you are hoping will scale this, rather than gathering lots of great impact data and then realizing that the entity you want to take up your solution cares about, you didn't measure. In the case of our example, the scholar and the community-based organization cared about whether the platform enabled more low-income households to safely evacuate. But what the local government cared about, the people who they were hoping would take this on long-term, was whether in the long run this platform was cost-effective and would save them money. So they needed to factor this in to the evaluation design from the onset. Thinking about who might scale the solution, therefore, enables you to bring them into the process from the start. And this is crucial because one, they are much more likely to take it up if they have been involved from the onset than if you come to them with a ready-baked solution. And secondly, they are the ones that can tell you what the design would need to look like for them to be able to implement it at scale and what they care about in terms of outcomes. In our example, there were lots of considerations that the research team suddenly needed to factor in when thinking about scale. Who's going to be the staff that maintain it? What are their needs? Where will it be hosted so that it can be developed in the way that can be transferred over? How will people find out about the platform? The local government doesn't have the people or the resources to do outreach over the county, so who can they draw on? And again, you will not know your exact scaling pathway now. There are probably many different options. And it is through the process of engaging with partners, with potential scaling actors, that you can refine and narrow this pathway. And probably also learn about new potential pathways that you didn't even know about. So we've talked a lot about the need to seek external input at all stages and to co-create. So our final stage is who therefore needs to be involved to ensure that all of this does happen. Now, thinking about scale from the onset helps us to move from the framework of I need to find one partner to design and test something and then I'm done, to an orientation of multiple types of partner working together to ensure sustained impact. And there are three main types of partner that we refer to at SIL. These are in no way fixed, exhaustive, or required. So you don't have to have one of each and only one. Project needs might vary. Generally speaking, though, I want to encourage you to think about three types of partner. One, your testing partner or partners. So who is initially doing or using the solution? Secondly, your scale partner, as we just discussed, who enables you to reach large numbers of people sustainably and over time. And 3, your enabling partners. So these are partners who might not be direct implementers at scale or in the testing phase, but are essential for success, either through building political will, resourcing, or even removing potential barriers to implementation. For our example, the community-based organization was the initial testing partner. The scholar designed, rolled out, and tested the platform with the communities that organization serves. The scale partner was the County Office of Emergency Affairs. Specifically within that, both the GIS team and the communications team. And then finally, as mentioned earlier, through conversations about scale, the partners, it was identified that in order to really make sure people knew about it and use the platform, community-based organizations in the county that were already interacting with the target populations for other reasons were essential as enabling partners. Researchers needed to bring them in from the onset to reflect diverse community needs, to build trust, and to ensure that it was something they felt comfortable and empowered to promote. So working with all of these partners together from the onset is what enables you to start getting the answers to some of our original design questions, and therefore building out that pathway to impact. And it is what helps you to avoid our scenario that we started with, where we develop a platform and then share it with local government or community-based organization and wonder why no one takes it up, not realizing that it's too complex for staff to navigate, that the software is incompatible, that it's missing the key information that the CBOs would want to see on the platform to be willing to go out and promote it to their populations. So at this point, you might be feeling like our friend at the top, quite overwhelmed, or our friend below, wanting to think and explore more. Either way, do not worry, we are here for you. Please pop questions and reflections in the Q&A. We will also share these resources after the session. And if you do want to dive more into some of this work, check out our website and the training and education programs that we offer. We support faculty, postdocs, and PhDs across all schools at Stanford to build out these kind of solutions-oriented and partnership projects. Thanks so much.